Have you ever sat somewhere for just a few minutes and unknowingly invited something to follow you home? A forgotten chair facing the sea, an empty beach with no one around, a 12-year-old girl who sat down for a photo and stood up as someone else. What happened afterward terrified an entire family and nearly cost a child her life. The incident happened only last year. Your family had been invited to a wedding in Dong Nai province. Since the wedding belonged to one of your relatives, nearly everyone in the family planned to attend. The trip would take you from Kano all the way to Dong Nai, so your family rented a 16-seat van. Instead of driving straight there, everyone decided to leave a day early. The idea was simple. Spend some time together, enjoy a small family outing, then attend a wedding the next day. While discussing the route, your father suggested something. Since everyone would be traveling such a long distance anyway, why not stop by Kinjio Beach first? The older members of the family had not gone on a vacation in years, and the younger ones were excited at the thought of seeing the ocean. Everyone agreed immediately. The van left Kano early in the morning and reached Kinjio Beach around noon. There were your parents, your younger brother, your grandparents, 2 cousins, 2 aunts, and 2 12-year-old girls who were also your cousins. The beach was unusually quiet that day. Nobody was interested in shopping or sightseeing. Everyone simply wanted to enjoy the sea breeze and relax. As soon as the van stopped near the shoreline, people scattered in different directions, taking photos and walking along the coast. Meanwhile, the 2 12-year-old girls wandered farther down the beach together. The area they entered was almost completely deserted. No tourists, no vendors, no fishermen, nobody. But standing near the water was something strange. An old wooden chair. The chair faced directly toward the ocean. It looked ancient. The paint had long since faded, and the wood appeared so rotten that it seemed as though it would collapse if anyone sat on it. Years of rain, sunlight, and sea wind had nearly destroyed it, yet somehow it was still standing there. One of the girls noticed it first. Laughing, she walked over and sat down. The other girl followed behind her. Surprisingly, the chair didn't break, though it creaked softly beneath her weight, but remained intact. The girl pulled out her phone. She was about to take a picture. Then something changed. Suddenly, she froze. Completely. Her arm remained raised with the phone in her hand. Her eyes stared straight toward the sea. Her face became blank, expressionless, like someone had pressed pause on her entire body. At first, her cousin thought she was joking. "Come on," she called. "Let's go." No response. The girl didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even turn her head. She simply continued staring at the ocean. Her cousin called her name again. Nothing. It was as if she couldn't hear anything anymore. Eventually, the other girl lost interest and wandered off to play by herself. Since both children were still visible from where the adults stood, nobody paid much attention. Nearly 45 minutes passed. When it was finally time to leave, everyone returned to the van. Someone called for the girls. One came running back immediately. The other remained seated in the chair, still staring at the sea, still silent. At first, everyone assumed she was tired from the trip, but when family members approached and told her to get up, she refused. She sat motionless, not speaking, not reacting, just staring. The situation felt strange, very strange. Eventually, several adults guided her back toward the van. That's when they noticed something disturbing. Her hands were ice cold, so cold they felt like they had been submerged in freezing water. Everyone exchanged uneasy looks. Something wasn't right, but nobody knew what. The van started moving again toward Dong Nai, and that was when the real nightmare began. The moment she stepped onto the van, everything became worse. Only minutes earlier, she had been completely silent. Now she wouldn't stop talking. Words poured out of her mouth nonstop. Random sentences, meaningless phrases, disconnected thoughts. She talked and talked and talked as if someone had suddenly flipped a switch inside her head. At first, everyone assumed she was simply tired or delirious. But then her voice began to change. Slowly, unnaturally, the tone became deeper, rougher, older. It no longer sounded like a 12-year-old girl. It sounded like an elderly man. The transformation was so obvious that everyone inside the van noticed it immediately, and the way she spoke became even stranger. When talking to her grandfather, she referred to herself as I in the manner of an adult speaking to another adult. When speaking to everyone else, she used rude, aggressive language that she would never have used under normal circumstances. That frightened the family the most, because this girl was known for being extremely polite. She was especially afraid of her grandfather. He was strict, and she always behaved respectfully around him. Yet now she casually threw an arm around his shoulder. She laughed loudly. She spoke nonsense. She acted as if she had known him for decades, like an old drinking companion, like someone much older trapped inside a child's body. The atmosphere inside the van became tense. Nobody wanted to say it aloud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Something had followed her from that beach. Still, they decided to continue toward Dong Nai. They would find a spiritual healer as soon as they arrived. For now, all they could do was wait. Then the van passed a large cemetery. The moment the cemetery appeared outside the window, the girl suddenly exploded into panic. She jerked upright. Her back arched unnaturally. A terrifying scream burst from her throat. She pointed frantically toward the graveyard. Her entire body trembled. Line up! Line up! It's getting dark. It's getting dark already. Stop the vehicle. The adults rushed to hold her down. Several family members grabbed her arms while others tried to calm her. But she continued screaming, crying, thrashing wildly. She kept staring toward the cemetery as if she could see something nobody else could. Something waiting among the graves. Something calling to her. By this point, everyone was terrified. The rest of the journey felt endless. When they finally arrived in Dong Nai, nobody bothered eating or resting. The family immediately began searching for a spiritual master. Fortunately, they found one living nearby. But the moment the master saw the girl, his expression changed. He didn't even allow the family to explain what had happened. Instead, he hurried inside his house. He changed clothes, grabbed his belongings, and came back out almost immediately. We have to leave now. The family stared at him. Where are we going? The old master looked at the girl and answered, back to the beach. His voice was serious. There isn't enough time. The family didn't understand. But seeing the urgency in his face, they obeyed. The girl's father carried her. Another relative accompanied the master. Together they drove all the way back to Kinjio Beach. You didn't go with them. You remained in Dong Nai. Everything that happened afterward was told to you later by family members. According to them, The master walked directly to a specific location on the beach. Not the shoreline, not the parking area, not the tourist section. He went straight toward the old wooden chair, the exact chair where the girl had sat. The master stopped in front of it. Then he began performing a ritual. What happened during that ritual was never described in detail, but afterward, the master explained what he had discovered. According to him, the girl had become possessed by the wandering spirit of a soldier who had died long ago. A restless spirit, a lonely spirit, one that had attached itself to her the moment she sat in that chair. The chair itself wasn't important. It had merely become a place where the spirit lingered, and when the girl sat there, she unknowingly invited it into her body. The master later told the family something that chilled everyone to the bone. We were lucky if we had waited a few more hours. The child would not have survived because she was so young. Her body wasn't strong enough to endure the possession for very long. The spirit had already begun taking control. Another few hours, and the damage might have been irreversible. When the ritual ended, the girl suddenly collapsed. Her body became limp. She lost consciousness immediately. An ambulance was called. She was taken to the hospital. For 2 full days, she remained unconscious. The family waited anxiously beside her bed. Nobody knew whether she would wake up. Nobody knew whether she would ever be the same again. Then finally, she opened her eyes. Slowly, weakly, but completely normal. The strange voice was gone. The bizarre behavior was gone. The terrifying personality that had appeared inside the van had vanished. It was as if none of it had ever happened. Eventually, she recovered completely, and life returned to normal. But nobody in the family ever forgot that day, especially the image of that lonely wooden chair facing the sea, a chair that looked abandoned, a chair that seemed harmless, a chair that nearly became a child's grave. Since then, your family has always remembered one lesson. When visiting unfamiliar places, especially isolated beaches, never touch or use objects that clearly don't belong to you, because sometimes you aren't the only one interested in them, and sometimes something may still be waiting there, watching, waiting for the next person to sit down. What would you do if a spirit didn't want to hurt you? It was only looking for its family, a child who died before reaching home, a spirit wandering alone in the dark. And one night, it found a boarding room full of people. It only wanted someone to play with. But what happened next terrified everyone inside that building. Back in 2018, you rented a small room in a boarding house. Directly above your room lived a young female teacher. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then strange things started happening. Every night, without fail, you would hear crying. Sometimes you would hear the sound of what seemed like temple bells. The noises always came from the teacher's room upstairs. Not once, not twice, every single night. As time passed, the sound became impossible to ignore. Many nights you would be lying in bed when loud thumping noises echoed from above. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds were so heavy that they shook the ceiling. You became afraid. Eventually, you started inviting friends over to sleep in your room because you no longer wanted to stay alone. The situation didn't make sense. The woman upstairs was a teacher. She had to wake up early every morning. Why would she be making noise all night long? The more you thought about it, the stranger became. Eventually, curiosity overcame fear. One night, After hearing the noises again, you and several friends decided to investigate. You quietly climbed the stairs. The hallway was dark, almost completely black. When you reached the teacher's room, something immediately felt wrong. Nobody was inside. The room was empty. Yet there was one thing that caught your attention. Balloons. Everywhere. The walls were covered with balloons. There were so many that the room looked more like a child's birthday party than a teacher's apartment. The sight made everyone uncomfortable. Nobody understood why. You quickly suggested leaving. Something about the room felt unsettling. The group headed downstairs and walked to a nearby convenience store to buy drinks. After returning, everyone opened cartons of milk and began drinking. Everything seemed normal, except for yours. The moment you took a sip, you nearly spat it out. The milk tasted horribly sour, completely spoiled. You stared at the carton. It didn't make any sense. Everyone had purchased drinks from the same store, from the same shelf. Yet only yours had gone bad. You complained to your friends, but nobody thought much of it. Maybe you had simply grabbed a defective carton. Nothing more. Outside, rain began pouring heavily. One of your friends walked over to the window to watch the storm. For a few moments, everything was quiet. Then suddenly, she screamed. Everyone jumped. Her face had turned pale. Terrified. There! She pointed outside. Someone is standing out there. You rushed to the window. Rain pounded against the glass. The darkness swallowed everything beyond a few meters. You saw nobody. Absolutely nobody. You laughed nervously. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe the storm had frightened her. But before you could finish teasing her, she slowly walked away from the window toward the staircase. At first, nobody paid attention. Then you glanced in her direction, and your blood froze. She was staring directly at you, without blinking, without moving. Her eyes had rolled upward. Only the whites remained visible. No pupils, no expression, just two blank white eyes locked onto you. The sight was horrifying. A normal person only shows a little white around their eyes, but hers had become completely white. She stood there silently, watching, watching, watching. You felt every hair on your body stand up. What is wrong with her? You shouted. The room immediately fell silent. Everyone understood. Something was terribly wrong. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody spoke. Fear filled the room. Someone quickly grabbed the phone and called an older acquaintance. He wasn't exactly a spiritual master, but he knew a lot about supernatural matters. When he heard what was happening, he came immediately. The moment he arrived, he looked at the girl and knew this wasn't normal. He began performing a ritual. After some time, the girl slowly returned to herself. Her eyes became normal again. Her breathing stabilized. She looked confused, as though she had no idea what had happened. But then the man told everyone something shocking. During the ritual, he had seen a spirit, and it wasn't an evil one. It was a child, a small child, a child covered in mud and water, a child who had been dead for many years. The man continued speaking after the ritual ended. Everyone in the room sat frozen, listening. According to him, while he was communicating with the spirit, he discovered it wasn't malicious. It wasn't trying to hurt anyone. It wasn't seeking revenge. It was simply lost. The spirit belonged to a young child who had died years ago. He said the child told him a heartbreaking story. My older sister used to live in this area. I came here looking for her. The child explained that long ago, after leaving the countryside, it tried to travel to the city to find its sister, but it never made it. On the way, the child accidentally fell into a ditch. The water swept it away, and that was where its life ended. Since then, the spirit had wandered endlessly, searching, looking for its sister, never finding her. The child told him it had been searching for years, and when it arrived near the boarding house, it noticed something unusual. The room upstairs, the one filled with colorful balloons. To a child, it looked cheerful, warm, full of life, the kind of place where friends gathered and laughed together. The spirit had watched from afar, and eventually it wanted to join. I saw everyone having fun, so I wanted to stay too. Those were the words the child supposedly spoke. The room fell silent. Nobody knew what to say. The story was tragic, yet what the man described next terrified everyone even more. He said the spirit itself appeared gentle, but its appearance was horrifying. Its face was covered in blood. Its clothes were soaked. Its stomach was torn open. Mud and water clung to its body. It looked exactly like a child who had drowned. Even though it spoke softly, the sight of it was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. After hearing the child's story, the man persuaded the spirit to leave peacefully. The child agreed, but before leaving, it made a small request. It wanted to take a bath. The moment he said those words, everyone in the room stared at him. Nobody laughed. Nobody thought it was funny. The atmosphere was too frightening. The group gathered near the doorway. Nobody dared stand near the bathroom. Several people even grabbed sticks and held them tightly in their hands. Everyone watched the bathroom door. Seconds passed. Then slowly, the door creaked open by itself. Nobody touched it. Nobody stood near it. Yet it opened. A moment later, the faucet turned on. Water began pouring into the sink. The sound echoed throughout the room. Drip, splash. Drip, splash. The room became deathly silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Everyone simply stared. The man calmly said, "Don't be afraid. The child is bathing." Those words somehow made the situation even scarier. For several minutes, the sound of running water continued. Then it stopped. The bathroom door slowly moved again. The man closed his eyes, as if listening to someone nobody else could hear. After a while, he nodded. Then he spoke. The child says thank you. Everyone remained silent. He continued. The child says thank you for letting it bathe. It won't bother anyone anymore. Then he paused. The expression on his face changed slightly. The child has one more request. According to him, the spirit said that the 12th day of the month was its birthday. It wanted someone to remember it. It asked that a small offering be made on that day. Nothing elaborate, just a simple gesture. Then it made another request. The child wanted a plant, not one planted in soil. A plant that could survive in water. Something that would remain inside the room. A reminder that someone had once remembered it. The spirit promised that if the request was granted, it would quietly watch over the room and protect the people living there. At the time, everyone listened carefully. But as the days passed, life became busy. The promise was forgotten. The birthday offering was never prepared. The plant was never bought. Time moved on, or at least that was what everyone thought. That night, after the ritual ended, nobody slept. The wind chimes hanging outside the room kept ringing, again and again, And again, even when there was almost no wind. The sound continued until morning. When you woke up, another shock was waiting. The landlady suddenly told you to move out. Immediately. No explanation. No warning. Just leave. You were confused. You had done nothing wrong. At least not that you knew of. Then memories began returning. You remembered finding strange clumps of hair inside the room. Hair that didn't belong to anyone living there. You remembered muddy footprints appearing on the floor. Small footprints, like those of a child. They would appear unexpectedly, then disappear again. At the time, you had ignored those things. Now, they felt much more significant. Looking back, you eventually came to a conclusion. Perhaps the landlady had noticed strange things too. Perhaps she suspected something was wrong with the room. Perhaps she simply didn't want any more trouble. You never learned the real reason, but you left shortly afterward. And even today, whenever you think about that boarding house, you still remember the image of a lonely child spirit. Not evil, not angry, just endlessly searching for a sister it could never find. Story 3, The Doctor's Spirit. Most ghost stories end with fear. This one ended with heartbreak. A young woman, a hospital, a handsome doctor she met only in dreams, and a love story that should never have existed between the living and the dead. This story happened 2 years ago. It involved one of your older cousins. The event began when your grandmother became ill and had to stay in the hospital for treatment. As the eldest granddaughter, your cousin took turns staying overnight to care for her. The first night seemed ordinary. Nothing unusual happened. Your grandmother rested peacefully. Doctors and nurses moved through the hallways as usual. Everything felt normal. Until late that night, around midnight, your cousin needed to use a restroom. Because she had only arrived at the hospital that day, she wasn't familiar with the building's layout. So she asked the doctor for directions. The doctor pointed down a long hallway. The restroom is at the very end. She thanked him and started walking. The farther she went, the emptier the corridor became. The lights seemed dimmer. The atmosphere felt colder. By the time she reached the end, she found 2 restrooms. One was locked. The other was open. She entered without thinking much about it. Then suddenly, the lights went out. Complete darkness. The change was so abrupt that it felt as if someone standing outside had deliberately switched them off. Fear rushed through her body. For a moment she froze. Her heart pounded, but she kept repeating the same thought to herself. I haven't done anything wrong. Nothing will happen. Trying to stay calm. She waited. After several seconds, the lights came back on. Nothing was there. Nobody stood outside. Nobody was inside. Everything looked perfectly normal. Shaken but relieved, she returned to her grandmother's room. The rest of the month passed without incident. Eventually, your grandmother recovered and was discharged. Everyone returned home. The strange experience at the restroom slowly faded from memory, or so she thought. The day she returned home, your cousin slept almost the entire afternoon. By evening, she wasn't tired anymore. Around midnight, she lay in bed scrolling through her phone. Eventually, she fell asleep, and that was when she met him. In her dream, she found herself walking beside a young man wearing a doctor's uniform. He was tall, handsome, gentle. For reasons she couldn't explain, she felt comfortable around him. The dream felt incredibly real. The doctor took her to beautiful places, fields filled with flowers, peaceful gardens, quiet landscapes that looked almost unreal. Everywhere they went felt warm and comforting. She enjoyed every second of it. Then suddenly, she woke up. It was exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, but something felt wrong, very wrong. She wasn't lying on her bed anymore. She was lying on the floor, as if someone had lifted her while she slept and thrown her down. The shock left her trembling. Immediately, she got up and went to find her father. He was already awake. After listening to her story, he tried to reassure her. It was just a dream. Don't think too much about it. Eventually, she returned to bed. But the following night, the dream came back. The same doctor, the same smile, the same gentle voice. This time, things became much more intimate. When she woke up, it was 3 in the morning again. Exactly 3. The coincidence terrified her. Now she was convinced something supernatural was happening. She told her mother everything. The dreams, the hospital, the mysterious doctor, the repeated awakenings at 3 o'clock. Her mother immediately decided to seek help. The next morning they visited a spiritual master. The moment they arrived, the master looked at her and seemed to understand everything. Without asking many questions, he began preparing a ritual. He held a red talisman in his hand, walking around her repeatedly while chanting prayers. Then suddenly, her body began shaking violently. Moments later, she collapsed. Everything went black. When she finally regained consciousness, she was back home. The ritual was already over. Confused, she asked what happened. That was when her mother told her the truth. During the ritual, after she fainted, something had spoken through her. A spirit, the spirit of the doctor, while her body lay unconscious. Tears continuously streamed from her eyes. Then a voice completely different from her own began speaking. A sad voice, a man's voice. According to her mother, the spirit said, "Please forgive me. I developed feelings for her, but I never intended to take her away." The room fell silent. Everyone understood. The doctor from her dreams was real, but he wasn't alive. The revelation left everyone stunned. A dead doctor, a spirit, a man who had somehow followed her home from a hospital. After hearing his words, the spiritual master continued the ritual. The spirit didn't resist. In fact, according to everyone present, he seemed genuinely heartbroken. He wasn't angry. He wasn't violent. He wasn't trying to harm her. He had simply fallen in love. And that was exactly what made the story so tragic. The master eventually persuaded him to leave. For the moment, everyone believed the problem had been solved. Your cousin returned home. That night, she was exhausted. The emotional strain of the day had drained all her energy. She thought she would finally be able to sleep peacefully. But shortly after midnight, she dreamed of him again for the final time. The dream felt different from the others. The beautiful scenery was gone. The gardens were gone. The flowers were gone. Instead, they stood together in silence. A quiet place surrounded by darkness. The doctor looked exactly the same. The same uniform. The same gentle face. The same eyes. But this time there was sadness in them. A sadness deeper than anything she had ever seen. For a while neither of them spoke. Then he finally smiled. A small smile. A painful smile. And he said, "It's okay now." His voice sounded calm, almost peaceful. Then he continued, "I'm going to leave." Tears immediately filled her eyes. even though she knew he wasn't alive, even though she knew this relationship could never exist. Part of her still felt attached to him, because for weeks he had been appearing in her dreams, talking to her, walking beside her, treating her with a kindness she couldn't explain. The doctor looked at her quietly. Then he spoke once more. "If I have the chance to be reborn," his voice trembled, "I'll find you again." He took a step backward. "And when I do, another step, I'll marry you." The moment those words left his mouth, the dream began to fade. The darkness swallowed everything. His figure became blurry, more distant, until finally he disappeared. Completely. When she woke up the next morning, she knew it was over. Something inside her simply knew. The dreams never returned. She never saw him again. Not once. Not ever. The doctor would appear night after night was gone. Years later, she would tell this story to family members. And every time she reached the ending, she would become quiet. Because despite everything that had happened, despite the fear, despite the supernatural nature of it all, a part of her still remembered him. Not as a ghost, not as a spirit, but as someone who had loved her. Someone who had wanted a future that could never happen. Perhaps that is why stories involving spirit attachments are often the saddest. Sometimes they are not driven by hatred. Sometimes they are not driven by revenge. Sometimes they begin because a lonely soul develops feelings it cannot let go of. But no matter how strong those feelings are, the living and the dead cannot walk the same path forever. Eventually one side must leave. Eventually one side must say goodbye. And sometimes the final goodbye hurts more than the haunting itself.